Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we take complex topics and distill them into essential knowledge for you, our incredibly curious listener.
Glad to be here.
Today, we're plunging into the profound insights of Ludwig von Mises' The Theory of Money and Credit. It's a really foundational work, first published way back in 1912, with later editions in 1953.
It certainly is still incredibly relevant.
Our mission today is to navigate Mises' dense arguments, but they're incredibly prescient arguments about money, credit, and the state's influence.
Yeah, absolutely.
We'll extract the critical nuggets so you can quickly grasp what truly matters from this, well, monumental text.
It's definitely a journey worth taking.
Yeah.
You might often think that economic downturns or inflation are just these random acts of God, something unavoidable.
Right, just things that happen.
But Mises, in his typically blunt style, would tell you they are man-made or, to say it bluntly, government-made.
Wow, okay. Blunt is right.
He saw the great inflations of his age, and frankly of ours too, as offshoots of doctrines that ascribe to governments the magic power of creating wealth out of nothing.
That phrase, magic power of creating wealth out of nothing, it really jumps out. Still feels relevant.
It really does.
Absolutely. And that's where it gets really interesting, because Mises emphasizes that the true value of economics isn't just about understanding immediate effects.
No, it's much deeper than that.
It's about foretelling the remoter effects, and so to allow us to avoid such acts as attempt to remedy a present ill by sowing the seeds of a much greater ill for the future.
Exactly. Thinking long-term. Avoiding unintended consequences.
This deep dive will illuminate those very long-term consequences he warned about, starting with the very nature of money itself. So what did Mises believe was the fundamental role of money in society? Where does it even come from?
Well, Mises argues that money isn't a universal necessity. It doesn't just spontaneously appear everywhere. It only arises in an economic order, characterized by two key things: a division of labor and private property.
Right. You need people specializing and owning things first.
Precisely. In such a system where individual production decisions are often described as anarchistic, meaning, not centrally planned money, steps in
how?
as that common medium of exchange. It's needed to facilitate market transactions, making the whole decentralized system function.
So it's the critical link that transforms direct barter, which can be incredibly inefficient,
Hugely inefficient.
into what he calls indirect exchange. Can you walk us through what he means by that and why it's so foundational?
Certainly. Imagine you want apples, but you only have shoes to trade.
Okay.
In a direct barter system, you'd have to find someone who not only has apples, but also happens to want your specific shoes. It's incredibly difficult.
Yeah, the double coincidence of wants. Hard to find.
Exactly. Mises illustrates indirect exchange as trading your good, let's call it A, for something else, P. You don't actually want P to use yourself.
Right.
But you take P simply because you can then easily trade P for Q, which is what you do want.
Ah, so P is the money.
Money becomes that universally accepted.
Makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
And the function of money goes beyond just immediate exchange in a market, doesn't it? Mises also talks about its role in transmitting value through time and space. How does that play out?
Indeed. Through time, money historically served as a means of hoarding value, saving up. Though he knows now that's largely replaced by owning interest-bearing property.
Okay, so saving versus investing, basically.
Kind of. And through space, think of an immigrant. They sell their property, say, in Europe.
Yeah.
Move to America with money, and then use that money to buy a new homestead. Money facilitates that transfer of value across geographical divides.
Got it. So it bridges time and distance.
Right. And this brings us to a crucial point. Mises also challenges the common legal view of money as simply a medium of payment.
What's his issue with that? Isn't paying someone what money does?
Well, yes, legally. But for an economist, Mises insists the root of payment is fundamentally exchange.
Ah, okay.
The laws focus on money's power to discharge liabilities, while legally important, can actually obscure the underlying economic reality.
Which is?
That money is first and foremost a medium of exchange. It's about what you can get with the money, its purchasing power, not just its legal status in settling a debt.
That's a key distinction,
Right.
which naturally leads us to how we value money then.
Exactly. Mises states that value is always a result of a process of valuation.
Meaning?
It's a direct psychological judgment. It compares the significance of different goods from an individual's perspective.
Right.
It's not about some objective measurement like length or weight,
Right.
but your subjective assessment. How important is this good to me right now?
And he makes a crucial point about how exchange opportunities themselves change how we value things. He says they induce the individual to rearrange his scales of values.
Yes, that's key. It's not just about an apple's use value to you, like how much you enjoy eating it.
Mhm.
It's also about what you can get for that apple in exchange. If you know you can trade your apple for something you value even more, your subjective valuation of that apple actually changes. It goes up.
That's fascinating. So the market potential affects personal value.
Absolutely. And this is critical for money because, unlike other commodities, money's subjective value is derived
Derived from what?
from the subjective value of the goods it can obtain. Money functions because it has an objective exchange value, a purchasing power.
Mm-hmm.
It's not valuable in and of itself, like maybe a hammer is. Its value lies in what it represents access to.
Okay, that clarifies the foundation. Now that we've grasped the true nature of money, Mises then turns his, well, formidable intellect to exposing the common yet dangerous misconceptions.
Right, the myths.
He critiques what he calls the naive and confused popular conception of value, the idea that precious metals are intrinsically valuable,
Yeah, like gold just is valuable.
while considering paper money as somehow anomalous or fake. He emphasizes that distinguishing money based on its physical appearance, like a gold coin, versus a paper note, is scientifically useless.
He thinks it's a source of deep misunderstanding. It misses the economic function.
So it's not the shininess or the material that makes something money in the economic sense.
Not at all.
He directly challenges the idea, put forth by some thinkers like Knapp at the time, that modern money, say the German mark or British pound back in 1914, wasn't actually gold, but specified units with a definite significance in terms of value that is assigned to them by law.
Yeah, the state theory of money. Knapp was a big proponent.
But for Mises, even modern metal coins, not merely substitutes or tokens, are nothing but ingots whose weight and fineness are officially guaranteed.
Exactly. The stamp is just a guarantee of the metal's quality and quantity, not the source of its value as money.
A critical takeaway here is Mises reveals that this nominalistic view of money, the idea that money's value is purely what the law declares it to be, rather than its market exchange value.
Right, that a dollar's a dollar because the government says so.
He says that view is actually ancient and primitive. He argues that it's fundamentally unable to contribute a single word toward the solution of the chief problem of monetary theory,
Which is?
namely that of explaining the exchange ratios between money and other economic goods. It just sidesteps the core economic question of why money is valued in the first place.
It doesn't explain purchasing power, basically.
Exactly. And this leads us directly to the state's role. If money's value isn't just declared by law, what are the limits of the state's power over money?
Well, Mises clarifies that the state's position in the market is like any other participant, really.
How so?
It exchanges goods and money on terms governed by price laws, just like everyone else. It can levy taxes, yes, collect money that way.
Sure.
But it cannot just arbitrarily alter exchange ratios, except by altering the factors that determine them. Governments cannot simply legislate prices into existence or decree value.
And he offers some vivid historical examples of that, doesn't he, to show it doesn't work.
Indeed, historical examples from Diocletian's edict on maximum prices in ancient Rome
Right, trying to cap prices.
to price controls during the French Revolution, they perfectly illustrate this point.
Yeah.
They failed
Why did they fail?
because they couldn't overcome the functional limitations of government intervention in a private enterprise system. Such measures, Mises notes, only really work in a centrally planned socialistic state where production and distribution are entirely controlled by the state.
Because then the state is the market, essentially.
Pretty much. So a critical insight here. While the state can regulate the issue of coins or paper notes, it cannot command them to become money. Money, Mises says, is created only by the usage of those who take part in commercial transactions.
So it's a bottom-up phenomenon, arising from market practice, not a top-down decree.
Exactly. It emerges from social convention and utility in exchange.
That's a powerful distinction. And it brings us to another common misconception he tackles, categorizing money as a production good or social capital.
Oh yeah, this is a big one.
That really goes against intuition, doesn't it? We're often conditioned to think that more money always means more wealth, more capital. But Mises makes a truly surprising distinction here.
He does. It's a crucial point.
Can you unpack why he separates these two concepts? What does he mean by money being merely an acquisitive instrument?
This isn't just semantics. It's a profound challenge to how we often intuitively think about wealth. Mises firmly states that production is quite possible without money.
You could build things without cash changing hands.
Right. And crucially, no increase in the welfare of the members of a society can result from the availability of an additional quantity of money.
Right.
Just having more units of money doesn't make society richer in real terms.
So printing money doesn't create real wealth.
Not according to Mises. Money is only an acquisitive instrument when it's actually exchanged for other goods.
Okay.
Idle money cash sitting under a mattress or even just in a checking account not being spent isn't capital and produces no fruit. The real capital is the goods, the machinery, the resources for which that money is eventually exchanged.
So the money is just the claim ticket, not the actual productive asset.
Sure, precisely. So the next time you hear about printing more money to solve an economic problem, Mises would urge you to ask, is this creating real capital, real productive capacity, or just more claims on existing wealth?
That's a fantastic so what. It really shifts the perspective. If we connect this to the bigger picture, it underpins his critique of the quantity theory of money.
Yes, it does.
While he acknowledges a core of truth in it, that variations in money supply and demand do affect value.
He doesn't deny that link entirely.
But he critiques its mechanical version. What was his issue with that simplistic view?
Mises argued it failed to explain how this actually happens. It missed the mechanism.
Which is?
The mechanism, for Mises, always runs through these subjective valuations of individuals. The quantity theory often presented like a physical law, double the money, halve the value.
Like levers and pulleys.
Exactly. He specifically refutes that belief that a doubling of the money supply must lead precisely to a halving of purchasing power. He argues that individual valuations are not directly or uniformly proportionate to changes in their money stock.
How does that work in practice?
Well, imagine if you suddenly received twice the amount of money you currently have. Your valuation of each individual dollar or unit would certainly change, likely decrease.
Right. You might spend more freely.
But not necessarily by exactly half. And crucially, how much your valuation changes would differ for everyone, depending on their circumstances, their preferences, what they want to buy.
So it's not a simple mathematical equation.
No, it's a far more nuanced, human-centric view, rooted in individual choices and the order in which new money enters the economy and affects prices, not some automatic economic lever.
Indeed, that complexity is key. Now let's plunge into what Mises viewed as the real perils of inflation and other related economic misconceptions.
Right, the dangers.
He argues that inflation, particularly when it's done via issuing currency notes or inconvertible banknotes, money not backed by, say, gold,
Fiat money, basically.
is fundamentally a government tool. A tool to increase its own resources, often for fiscal ends like financing wars, without having to visibly raise taxes.
It's a stealthy way to fund government spending.
And here's where it gets really interesting, or maybe disturbing. He says it creates a pseudo-profit appearance for entrepreneurs and capitalists.
Yeah, explain that a bit. It sounds counterintuitive.
Well, imagine prices are rising due to inflation. Businesses sell their goods for more money, so their nominal profits look great on paper.
Okay, makes sense.
But the cost of replacing inventory, machinery, labor are also rising, often faster than they realize or can account for, so they feel like they're making more profit.
But their real capital might actually be shrinking.
Exactly. He says this allows capital to be effectively taxed away through inflation without the public or even the business owners initially realizing it. And, incredibly cynically, he notes it also served to divert the fury of the people to speculators and profiteers.
Ah, find a scapegoat. Blame the people benefiting from rising prices, not the policy causing them.
Precisely. So it's a hidden tax with a convenient scapegoat built in. But Mises also argues that any perceived beneficial effects from inflation, like stimulating exports or seeming to boost production, are fleeting. What's the catch?
The catch is they are temporary. They last only so long as they are in progress.
Meaning?
Meaning, to keep getting that stimulus effect, you need accelerating inflation. Continuous progressive depreciation of the currency's value.
Which sounds unsustainable.
Mises deems it unrealizable in the long run. It ultimately leads to money becoming commercially useless, what he calls demonetization, as people try to hold as little cash as possible because it's losing value so quickly. Think hyperinflation scenarios.
Like Weimar Germany or Zimbabwe.
Exactly. And the crucial consequence, as he sees it, is that inflation can only benefit a part of the community at the cost of a corresponding loss by the other part. It's not making everyone richer.
Who wins and who loses, typically?
Well, those who receive the new money first, maybe government contractors or banks involved in credit expansion or industries favored by government spending, they benefit because they spend the money before prices have fully adjusted upwards.
Okay.
But those who receive the new money later or are on fixed incomes or hold cash, they lose. They face higher prices before their incomes catch up, if they ever do. He gives examples like mine owners benefiting early, while farmers selling produce at old prices but paying new, higher prices for supplies ultimately lose out.
So it's a wealth transfer, orchestrated by the inflation, not genuine wealth creation.
That's exactly his point. It's a zero-sum game or even negative sum if it destabilizes the economy, not magical wealth creation.
So if inflation is this insidious, slow-motion transfer of wealth, what happens when governments try to fix the symptoms, like rising prices with things like price controls? Mises has some pretty vivid warnings about that too, doesn't he?
He does. He argues that etastic policy, meaning state interventionist policy, often leads to official price fixing.
Why do they do it?
It's usually born from the erroneous belief that high prices are simply caused by greedy bulls and profiteers, rather than the underlying monetary expansion.
Blame the sellers again.
Right. Mises vividly describes how price controls inevitably disorganize the market. Goods that are priced below their market value simply disappear from legal channels.
Shortages, empty shelves.
Exactly. Then you might see black markets emerge, or even direct exchange barter reappearing. The entire system of social division of labor, which relies on market prices to coordinate activity, starts to break down.
He uses the French Revolution example again here, right?
Yes, the law of the maximum. It led to chaos. Imagine a baker in Paris during that time, suddenly told they can't sell bread above a certain artificially low price. What happens?
They stop baking or sell it under the table, or the ingredients become impossible to get, the bread disappears.
Precisely. He emphasizes that the economic organization based upon division of labor and private property in the means of production can function only so long as price determination in the market is free.
So price controls are fundamentally incompatible with a market economy.
In his view, yes.
Yeah.
Any attempt to fix prices, if universally enforced, inevitably leads towards the abolition of private property and ultimately a centrally controlled socialist economy. Because the state has to take over production and distribution if prices can't guide it.
That's a stark warning. This raises an important related question about interest rates and credit expansion. How does Mises see the connection between money supply, inflation, and interest rates?
Well, he contends that variations in the money supply only permanently influence the rate of interest through the displacements in the distribution of property and income that they evoke.
Okay, what does that mean?
It means the long-term real interest rate isn't directly determined by how much money there is. Inflation might cause temporary shifts as it works its way through the economy, maybe lowering rates initially as new money floods the loan market. But the fundamental rate is set by deeper factors.
Which are?
He argued strongly against what he called the expansionist doctrine. This is the idea, still popular today, that interest is just an artificial impediment to prosperity, maybe created by greedy bankers, that can and should be lowered by simply increasing the money supply or expanding credit.
So he disagrees that central banks can just push rates down indefinitely.
He fundamentally disagrees with the premise. For Mises, interest is not artificial. It's a reflection of a fundamental human valuation: time preference.
Time preference.
The universal preference for having goods now, rather than identical goods in the future. Interest is the price, or the premium, we place on present satisfaction over future satisfaction. It's deeply ingrained, he argued, existing independently of social institutions or banking systems.
So it's not something the state can just legislate or print away.
Exactly. You can try to manipulate the market rate of interest temporarily, but you can't eliminate the underlying natural rate based on time preference without causing major distortions.
So banks can reduce market interest rates, at least for a while, by issuing what Mises calls fiduciary media. What exactly are those, and what's the warning he issues about their use?
Fiduciary media are essentially money substitutes, like banknotes or checkable deposits that are not fully backed 100% by actual base money, like gold in his time or central bank reserves today in the vault. It's credit created, effectively, out of thin air by the bank.
Okay, fractional reserve banking.
Yes. Banks can expand credit almost indefinitely, by issuing these fiduciary media, lending out more than they have in actual reserves. This can push market interest rates below the natural rate determined by time preference.
And the problem with that is?
Mises warns that this inevitably leads to a fall in the objective exchange value of money. That is, inflation, and perhaps more damagingly, it leads to malinvestment.
File investment.
Businesses take out loans at these artificially low rates and start projects that seem profitable, but are only viable because credit is so cheap. When the credit expansion stops or slows, or when rates inevitably rise back towards the natural level, these projects are revealed to be unsustainable, leading to busts and recessions. This is the core of his business cycle theory.
So the elasticity of credit systems, often touted as a benefit.
He saw it differently. For him, it wasn't a natural, helpful flexibility, but rather an artificial ability to induce unsustainable demand and distort the capital structure, which ultimately leads to crises.
And speaking of things governments try to manage, Mises observes that even when governments officially go off the gold standard,
Which most did in the 20th century.
gold often remains, in practice, the world's money. National fiat currencies are still often implicitly or explicitly valued based on their stability relative to gold.
You still see gold prices quoted everywhere. Central banks still hold gold reserves. It retains that benchmark status, even unofficially.
He points out that the primary criticism of the gold standard by its opponents, he mentions Keynes and his followers, particularly with the full employment policy ideas emerging in the 1930s.
Right, the push for more active government management of the economy.
Their main objection to gold is precisely what Mises sees as its main virtue. What is that virtue?
Its virtue, in Mises' eyes, is its incompatibility with a policy of credit expansion.
Ah, the handcuffs again.
Exactly. The gold standard acts as a constraint. It prevents governments and central banks from arbitrarily inflating the money supply and manipulating interest rates to pursue short-term goals like artificially boosting employment through easy money.
What Mises highlights is that while there might be initial apparent success from such inflationary policies, maybe lowering real wages temporarily, making exports cheaper, reducing unemployment for a bit,
A quick fix.
this, he insists, was merely a passing phenomenon. Eventually, he believed, the masses began to see through the artifices of inflation. The short-term gains evaporate, leaving behind distorted prices and unsustainable investments.
The magic wears off, and the hangover begins.
Which leads to what Mises calls the emergency argument for inflation. He acknowledges the political argument that sometimes in national emergencies like a major war or perhaps preventing mass starvation, maybe inflation is a smaller evil to a greater one.
A pragmatic, if desperate, justification.
But he immediately counters that. What's his powerful rebuttal? Why does he reject even this emergency justification?
He emphatically argues that this is ultimately a self-defeating policy which must inevitably lead to an economic cataclysm.
Why self-defeating?
Because, as we discussed, inflation makes it easier for governments to finance massive spending without resorting to direct, visible taxation. This conceals the true cost of the emergency measures from the public and bypasses potential political resistance.
So it enables potentially reckless or excessive government action by hiding the price tag.
Precisely. It might seem like the easier path in the short term, but Mises believed it undermines sound finance, distorts the economy, and ultimately makes the society less resilient and prosperous, potentially leading to an even bigger crisis down the road. He saw it as kicking the can down a road that leads off a cliff.
A very stark warning. So given all these dangers and misconceptions, what does this all mean for you, our listener, and for thinking about sound monetary policy and maybe reconstruction if things have gone wrong?
Well, Mises does posit an ideal.
What's that?
An ideal of a money with an invariable exchange value, so far as the monetary influences on its value are concerned. Basically, money whose purchasing power doesn't fluctuate because of changes in its own supply or demand, only because of changes in the goods and services it buys.
That sounds difficult to achieve. How would that work?
Well, he acknowledges this ideal implies some kind of regulating authority, but he immediately flags the problems. The inherent uncertainty of quantitative effects, how much do you change the money supply to keep value stable, and the significant risk of mistakes by that authority.
Human error, political pressure.
Exactly, which leads him back to preferring a metallic money, like gold, whose supply is largely independent of human political intervention. It might not be perfectly stable, but it's less prone to deliberate manipulation.
So for him, despite its own issues, gold was the practical answer.
He circles back to it, asserting pretty forcefully, sound money still means today what it meant in the 19th century. the gold standard.
And its value?
Its preeminence, he says, lies in making the monetary unit's purchasing power independent of the measures of governments, thereby preventing inflation. It's that fundamental handcuff on government power over the currency.
So returning to sound money, perhaps gold standard, isn't just about financial tweaking, is it? Mises is very clear on this.
Absolutely not. He states, monetary reconstruction, including the abandonment of inflation and the return to sound money, is not merely a problem of financial technique that can be solved without change in the structure of general economic policies.
It's much bigger than just swapping paper for gold. What kind of radical change does he say is required?
It requires a radical change in economic philosophies.
A whole worldview shift.
Yes, specifically a total and unconditional rejection of those allegedly progressive policies. He points to things like the New Deal or Fair Deal in the U.S. as examples from his later writing policies that he saw as fundamentally hostile to the preservation of economic freedom.
Why did he see them as hostile?
Because they relied on or led to the kind of government intervention, spending, and potential inflation that he believed undermined a sound monetary system and distorted the market economy. He attributed the collapse of monetary systems, like those in Europe after World War I, directly to deliberate actions on the part of various governments, using their central banks for, as he put it, disorganization and demolition.
Strong words. So what would his alternative look like? An integral gold standard?
Yes, he argues for an integral gold standard. The key features are that the agency responsible for converting currency to gold is politically independent. Its only job is maintaining the legal parity, the fixed exchange rate between the domestic currency and gold, or foreign exchange pegged to gold.
So not setting interest rates, not bailing out banks, not financing government debt.
Precisely. A very narrow technical function insulated from political pressures to inflate or manipulate.
That sounds like a complete overhaul compared to modern central banking. But what are the practical complexities, the challenges of actually doing that, transitioning back to a gold standard? It can't be easy.
No, the challenge of transition is significant, and Mises acknowledges this. He discusses the complexities, particularly the crucial choice of setting a new gold parity, the fixed exchange rate between the currency and gold.
Why is that choice so difficult?
If you set the gold price too high relative to the existing currency, meaning you devalue the currency significantly, you lock in past inflation, but might avoid deflation. If you set it too low, trying to restore the currency's previous gold value, it could require painful deflation, falling prices and wages to get there.
And deflation has its own problems.
Big problems. Deflationary complaints, Mises notes, can be much more unpopular than those of inflation, potentially jeopardizing the entire reform effort. People hate falling wages and rising debt burdens.
He points to British monetary history, doesn't he?
Yes, he suggests the way Britain returned to gold in 1925 at the pre-war parity, which required deflation, actually fueled the backlash against the gold standard and boosted inflationist ideas in the 1930s and 40s. So how you make the transition is critically important and politically fraught.
It's not as simple as just flipping a switch back to gold. The path itself is incredibly tricky.
Extremely tricky.
Given these difficulties, it seems Mises doesn't believe we can simply legislate our way to sound money with the right technical fixes. His final thought on this, and perhaps the most powerful, is about the power of vigilance.
Yes, this is crucial for him.
He dismisses the idea of relying on 1,000 laws and dozens of alphabetical bureaus to maintain sound currency. That sounds very relevant today.
Doesn't it just?
Instead, what does he call for?
Perpetual vigilance on the part of the citizens. It comes down to the people understanding and defending the value of their money.
How does that vigilance manifest? According to him, what should people be looking for?
A critical insight here is his emphasis on Gresham's law, the old principle that bad money drives out good. When people start preferring to hold on to older, more reliable money, like gold coins, and spend the newer, less reliable paper money faster, that's Gresham's law in action. When that phenomenon begins to operate, and paper money clearly starts to depreciate against goods or gold,
That's the alarm bell.
that should be the moment for public alarm. This vigilance, this recognition by the public that their money is being debased, is, in his view, the only truly effective check on the power of the government to inflate the currency. It's about citizens understanding the subtle signs and being ready to hold their governments accountable.
So ultimately, it rests on an informed and watchful public.
He believes so. Laws and institutions can help, but they aren't foolproof without public understanding and pressure.
So wrapping this up, what does this all mean for you, our listener? Mises's work, dense as it is, really forces us to confront the reality that our monetary system isn't some natural given, like the weather.
No, it's a product of choices.
It's a reflection of our economic and political choices. Understanding his insights, even if you don't agree with all of them, allows you to see beyond the surface headlines about inflation or interest rates.
Definitely. You start to see the underlying forces and ideas at play.
You can recognize, as Mises put it, that the present unsatisfactory state of monetary affairs is an outcome of the social ideology to which our contemporaries are committed and of the economic policies which this ideology begets. It connects monetary problems back to broader philosophical and political currents.
It really does. He forces you to think about the deep roots of these issues.
And here's a final provocative thought for you to mull over, building on Mises. If, as he suggests, people lament over inflation, but they enthusiastically support policies that could not go on without inflation,
Very pointed observation.
what then is the true cost of our collective desire, perhaps, for cheap money and seemingly limitless government spending, funded not by direct taxes, but by borrowing and monetary expansion? And taking it a step further, can a society genuinely achieve or maintain economic freedom in the way Mises conceived it, without first safeguarding its currency from political manipulation and the allure of inflation?
That's the fundamental question he leaves us with, isn't it?
Mhm.
A lot to think about there.